Hello and welcome back. We actually, on our show, The Use of Information Technology, decided we needed to do a little spotlight on infrastructure and security. So I am still here with Andrew Yonke, Atlas partner, along with our business journey with Cheryl Masisko, founder and CEO of Ideal Harvest. All right, let's just jump into this though, because I think it's really an important thing that Cheryl, at the end of the show, you brought up. Basics. You're starting a business and you got to get computers for everybody, software on it. We live in a world where everything's remote, technology, etc. So what do you do as a small business, Andrew?
Well, things have certainly changed. Obviously, years and years ago, there was a lot of DIY IT, and so people would buy their own systems and put them in and sort of run them as best they could. Fortunately, that's mostly gone by the wayside. Folks like Cheryl have realized that she's got plenty of things to do on her own plate, but that doesn't necessarily mean that everyone has arrived yet at maybe the best workable solution for them. So the spectrum tends to range from smaller, what we call break-fix service providers. So those are people that you call when it breaks and they come out and fix it and they bill you hourly. Most small businesses fall into that bucket. The good news is that you have somebody who is relatively competent, who can solve the problems that your computers may be having from a platform or a security issue. The downside is that there is virtually no proactivity at all. There is little to no relationship that's providing additional consulting or helping you understand and navigate what your technology journey is going to look like. And so the IT industry evolved many, many years ago into what is now called managed services. And so that's what, as businesses grow, and once they get to 10 or 15 employees usually, or computers, and they have a server, usually then they work with a managed service provider who is typically going to be providing services on a fixed cost, unlimited support model. They're going to be doing a lot of things that are proactive. They're going to be providing security in the form of antivirus and email filtration, possibly security awareness training, web content filtration, a whole lot of things. They're going to set up new computers and install software on them, help you pick which cloud vendors you might want to be working with, and again, help you make these decisions based on sound technology advice.
So by the way, Cheryl, when you first started, what were some of the issues that you were running into?
Well, I would say for me, having come out of a corporate world, I just assumed it was going to work, right? So I just assumed when I started up my business, once I bought the computer, it was just, all the calendar invitations were going to be flowing easily between phones and, and it's really not that way. I mean, I realized, in my previous company, we had an in-house IT department, and when things got wrong, went wrong, I just basically said, hey, fix it, And now in setting up the business, I think our biggest challenge in the early days was how to get the most simplistic things operating, because it can be a killer. You take a video call and you get disconnected, on your computer, or you don't have enough license, all the things that can happen that make you look less professional to your client base.
Sure.
And I think technology, while everybody's aware of some of the issues that I think as a society in general, we think technology probably does more than it actually can reliably all the time.
Sure.
But I think that, the biggest challenge for me was realizing that it is not as simple as just opening the box and everything works. So
plug and play.
Yeah, exactly. Plug and play is a very overused term that does not really.
That's why they used to call it plug and pray.
Yeah, exactly. So, and it's an especially big challenge for us because we are internationally based. Mm-hmm. And so, and we don't work in a centralized office. So sure. We work in several different offices. Some of us work from home. And so integrating all of that, everybody's different devices, Androids, iPhones, computers, it was like, I felt like I was drowning in the early days. We've gotten a better handle on it, but you don't really realize, I don't think I realized in the early days how important spending a little money in that area would have been.
Sure.
Because after you lose your contacts a couple of times because you do something wrong on your computer and there's nobody to go to, it was very eye-opening. So
Sure. No, it makes perfect sense. So managed service providers do not necessarily only work with the larger businesses. That's the important thing. And particularly when you have a distributed workforce, if you have people that are working remotely, you as a small business owner can absolutely provide your staff the exact same, and I would argue even better, IT experience than what the traditional corporate environment would. And that's because an IT service provider is exactly that, driven by service. If they don't perform, then you are certainly free to go find another one, as opposed to an IT department is a little bit less likely to be just let go of wholesale and replaced with something else. And so a service provider is always going to be there every single call for every single user to make sure that they're creating the best experience possible. And you need a help desk, you need somewhere for your users to be able to call, and somebody that can remote in and help solve a printer problem or an email problem like you described. There's really almost no business that can't work with a managed service provider, and you're typically going to be looking at somewhere between maybe $40 and $60 or so per workstation for them to manage and provide all the security and the support and so forth. And then if you have a server that's on site, they're going to charge a little bit more for that and probably back it up off-site and so forth. But again, they're operating as an entire IT department, so they're providing the support and the security and the disaster recovery and backup requirements. So
Yeah. I think the other big challenge for business owners is there's so many options out there. You know, I mean, we considered at one point using the whole Google suite, right?
Sure.
Do we operate off of that as our, or do we go to 365? Do we use Dropbox or do we use OneDrive? I mean, all of these little decisions, it makes a huge difference, and yet, let's be honest, most of us don't know how our technology works.
Sure.
And so it becomes very overwhelming, and it's just kind of almost like, you know, I'll take that one sort of attitude.
It becomes part of the overall picture. So just like with your internal software application selection and having the cultural component, the same thing goes with the things that are productivity software related. So for, you know, word processing and spreadsheets and so forth, cloud storage. Look at it more holistically, not just what is the solution or the product or where does it live physically, who's going to be supporting it, how is it going to be trained on internally, how are you going to make sure that it's really brought into the day-to-day functionality for all of your end users. That's the question, is to look at it holistically, because you've hit the nail on the head that, you know, G Suite and Office 365 and then, you know, Dropbox for storage or Box.net, there's tons that will do it, but somebody has to be accountable for making sure that that solution is doing what you need it to do for your staff, so that you or somebody else in your senior management is not the go-to person for every staff member that has a question about sharing a link from Dropbox, or, you know, how does this work in a Google spreadsheet? I'm used to Excel, for example. Those are the kinds of holistic views that you want to look at it.
But I want to add, though, what you just said, because you've got G Suite and 365, right, in terms of Microsoft. You brought up the most popular ones. I think one of the things that we don't think about when we are considering our IT infrastructure, we think about ourselves. You need to think about how you're interfacing with your customers. What do they use? You know, and if you go with G Suite and everybody that you're engaging with is actually in Microsoft, you have a conversion issue when you're sending things.
Learn that on the calendar invites.
So it's about the ecosystem that you're in. The other one is in picking vendors. I want to go to that too, but picking your vendors or picking your solutions, make sure that they're well known or popular enough. You know, sometimes it's saving $5 in a place is not going to pay off if you're using something that's radically obscure, just because you think, because all of a sudden if they go out of business or you lose your data or they're not as secure as they're saying they are, you really want to have those, you want to have the knowns, and you want to make sure that they're going to be able to deliver, which leads me to one thing. You know, it's funny, how do you pick a vendor that you know something? Because I can tell you, I've started several businesses. I picked a vendor once, and that vendor, I come out of high tech, I knew more than they knew. And it's one of those things that it's irritating if you have to look up what you have to do, that you don't have enough knowledge in the area. And I'm having to tell you how to go about doing something. How do you go about picking your IT partner? What do you recommend?
Oh, that's a great question. You're really talking about picking somebody that, like you said, knows, with any luck, a lot more about IT, obviously, than you do. And they should, just like you know more about what you do than than they
Right.
do. For the most part, they're all going to be really good at selling you the things that they're really good at, and may not be as good at talking about the things, obviously, that maybe they're not as good at. I would focus on, as a service provider, the mechanics of what makes that a good experience for you and your company. So asking questions like, what is the help desk experience like? Is it that somebody just emails in a ticket and then waits 2 days to hear back? Or is it that they can pick up the phone and reach somebody 90% of the time or more that's going to remote right in and go right to work? Those are the experiential questions that you want to know on behalf of your staff, so that 2 or 3 years from now, your staff isn't sort of grumbling about how it always takes IT a week to hear back. Always ask for references. Keep in mind that, of course, people are usually going to provide you the customers that are most happy, of course.
Yeah.
But asking for ones that are similar in size, or that use similar products to what you use, or platforms to what you use, and that have been with that vendor for a while. And take the time when you call them. Plan on getting at least, hopefully, 20 to 30 minutes on the phone with them, because what I've found is that usually when you're talking to somebody about a reference, they start off really glowing, and then you can kind of get conversational, and then eventually they might give you a little bit more of the real underlying information, which should still ultimately amount to a good story, and one that says we're still very happy with this vendor. Nobody's perfect, but if there's something that's really bad, you want to find that out, and you can with a little bit of time on the phone.
By the way, I have one other I want to recommend, because I get to say something about you. Is, you know what, and Cheryl said this earlier, don't go it alone. If you have a friend or somebody that you trust, bring them in and say, hey, would you help me interview this vendor? One of the things that Cheryl has is her husband is an infrastructure expert. That's his discipline. So asking somebody that you know to come in and say, hey, help me out, help me pick this vendor, would you interview them with me?
Sure.
Well, one of the key things I will say from the other side of the desk, if you will, talking to people, is how many questions they ask about my company and how we actually operate, as
Oh, great
opposed
question.
to, you know, just telling me all the features and benefits of theirs.
Sure.
Because if they're just trying to, again, put, you know, recommend this one size fits all kind of thing without understanding what I'm actually trying to accomplish, that's a big red flag for me, because I know I'm going to end up with some sort of technology that I'm probably going to have to do a lot of things to make it work for me.
Make it work for you.
Yeah.
And that gets back to the partnership approach, and that's ultimately what you're looking for. We in IT tend to consider that relationship as more of a partnership than a client-vendor relationship, because we're a little bit more like an attorney or an accountant, somebody that has a lot of responsibility for the uptime of your organization. They probably have a lot of access to sensitive information, and so it is based tremendously on trust, and that's a big one. And so somebody understanding your business is critical to knowing what your priorities are. Now, when you do work with a vendor, the flip side of that, by the way, this is both a good and a bad thing. It kind of depends. Let's say that you use the G Suite analogy. Let's say that you or your operations manager really likes Google, really likes G Suite. You find a vendor or an IT partner that is an Office 365 partner and somebody that's really, really good at supporting it, and you think that the rest of what they do is going to be, you know, valuable to you as well. It's important to stop at that moment and compare, because not everything is always going to be in alignment. You have to say, where am I getting the value here? Just like when you're looking at your internal software applications, where is the real value? Well, one might be that so-and-so or these people already used to using this. Well, that's great. There is some value to somebody already knowing that. It does not mean that it will always outweigh the rest of the value. And so you may say, you know, I'm sorry, Jim or Sue, you know, G Suite has got to go because we're going to be using Office 365, which might integrate natively with some of our other things, or we're going to use Microsoft's Power BI for business intelligence and dashboarding and KPIs. And so we've decided that that's going to be the platform of choice. So always to be comparing the pros and cons is important.
Yeah.
By the way, I want to highlight a couple of other things that you've done that I think are super smart. One of the things that Cheryl does with Ideal Harvest, for those in the industry, she actually has calculators on her website that you can go to. It's idealharvest.com, so that you can see what your yield is going to be with her systems. She made a choice in her hosting so that she got PCI compliant, depending on the growth of her business. She picked a hosting package that gave her 30% more capacity, so compared to all of the others, which also gives her better performance for those that are coming. It's got 30 days of backup, so she just makes sure in terms of security and protecting it. She also put package on there that she checks for malware on a daily basis to boot. So one of the things that Cheryl, because she knew she had a virtual workforce, she set things up to be virtual, but she had sensitivity too, and things that you need to pay attention to is your backup, your performance, your security. And those are things that Cheryl and everything that she does, she keeps top of mind. And those are things that you want to keep top of mind. So I give you lots of credit for some of the decisions that you're making as you are continuing to grow with what you're doing. So.
Well, and I would say thank you for saying that. And I would say that, one of the things we really stress and push with our clients is don't go into any decision from the beginning of the session. Like, try to envision where you're going to be and work backwards. And I think a lot of times with technology, we don't do that. For us, our technology is not only doing the automation, etc. It's a collaboration tool. There's no other way with all these remote offices that we can transfer information except through technology. We can't sit and meet every day. We can't have huddles and, other than by the phone, and then you can't really, especially since we're so design oriented. So I think it is important to understand, it's not just about creating a business and going out there and, like the Wild West. Let's hope, let's hope this all works. You really do. I don't think business owners often spend enough time just ruminating on their business and what it's going to be and how they're going to do it, and not just like, we tend to be very, in the old school speak, type A personalities. We just want to go, get that company started. And we pay for it in the end, like you said, because it's always more expensive to fix it on 2, 3, 4 years into your business than it is when you're first starting. And it's always going to grow and it's going to live and it's going to change. But think about it as the tool that it is and the strategic planning assistance that you need for your business, not just, I'm going to be able to send an email now.
Sure.
But I'm going to put one qualifier around that. And I love, Andrew, how you're always talking about value-based. Part of it, when you're in a startup, you may not have the money for everything, and that's just the way it goes. And sometimes you have to have a compromise, and it's okay. Compromise and upgrade when you can, because it is about cash flow. You got to make money. It takes money to make money. You got to make money to pay your people. So sometimes you're going to have to make some compromises, but it's compromising so that you're continuing to grow and keeping these things in mind. Do you have any parting thoughts for us, Andrew?
No, I would just say that that's a really good point, that even if you're making decisions that may not be the same ones that you're going to have 3 or 5 years from now, you can still make decisions that are going to give you the most flexibility a year from now. So, for example, a lot of people will choose the Apple platform for their business, which we run into, pretty frequently, not as often, obviously, though, as Microsoft. And as a technologist, I can tell you that I'm pretty agnostic. I'm about using whatever works in the scenario. However, a lot of small businesses, I find, will spend money on the Apple products, which cost more. It's a higher quality hardware platform, and then they find that they are really, really pigeonholed on what software will run on that, for example, because most applications are written for Windows. Now, of course, in a cloud-based and web-based environment, that's not important.
Not a problem.
But there are concerns about managing desktops, remote control, and security, and so forth. And these are all things that are kind of logistical, kind of not really strategic for your business, but they matter. They do matter to whoever might be supporting that environment. So I would just keep those things in mind too.
Yeah. Do you know what else you made me think of? There are a bunch of free tools that are out there for you from an IT infrastructure. You can do Zoom.us for videos. You get 45 minutes free. You have tools like Uber Conference that are free. Now you can upgrade and pay for them, but there are some free tools out there for collaboration that just in experiencing them. Do you have any other tools that you've been using?
We use Uber Conference right now. We're always looking for those things, or in the past, we certainly availed ourselves of many of those free platforms to get up and going. One thing I would say is that what I realized through this journey of my company is that technology, I don't know that people often put it in these terms, but for me, technology is your internal and external customer user experience. That's really what it boils down to.
Yes.
What you select is going to translate an image of your company to people. And so it's a very important decision. I think a lot of times it's an afterthought or it's a I have to do it kind of thing. But again, I think it's, just keep in mind that this is how you're going to communicate with the world. The platforms that you use and the software that you use and how easy it is and how translatable it is across, like you said, different people using different platforms out there is crucial. So
Sure.
Fantastic. Cheryl, thank you.
Yes.
Andrew, thank you. And on behalf of Atlas, we are wishing you more business and life success. Thank you for being here.
thank you.